so many of what I would call like stress protocols come down to mindset and emotional regulation. Really, I've begun to understand health as one single concept, which is balance, really.
Ooh, yes.
And and this applies beyond human physiology. I mean, if you look at like the healthiest economic system, it's generally one that has like a very thriving middle class where the distribution of wealth looks like this bell curve. Or if you look at ecology, the healthiest systems have biodiversity. So like a lot of different species finding balance. Or if you look at politics, you even find a strong middle where you can find compromise and cooperation, et cetera. Psychologically, we generally think of balance as the ability to find center or find the middle. But certainly in human physiology, really balance is the key.
Yep.
And we tend to call that homeostasis when it applies to human physiology. And our body really is seeking that balance out all of the time. I mean, it's very, very hard to disrupt your pH balance, for example. You can do it, a little bit, but what happens? You hold your breath, for example, and you build up like hypercapnia and a little excess carbon dioxide. And that will make your body a little bit more acidic, but then it bounces back to center, right? You can get into an ice bath, and what does that do? That plummets your core body temperature. And what does your body naturally do? It has this adaptive response of thermogenesis, and it brings you back up into that warm porridge of 98.6,
That's
right?
That's right.
Or you get too hot, what does the body do? It starts to sweat. It thermoregulates the other direction. So the body is really just engineered for homeostasis
Agree.
at every turn until we screw it up. and there's tons of things that we do in modern life that essentially undermines our body's ability to find that homeostasis. And certainly as it applies to stressful conversations, we avoid having them. So we never find that social homeostasis, in which we can actually, disagree without being disagreeable, or find some middle ground, or compromise some points to get other points, actually live within a healthy middle ground social contract. That seems to be, rarer than Stone Man syndrome at this juncture.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on homeostasis. I used to, in my clinic all the time, when I would put somebody on a supplement protocol, I would always say, this is a supplement you're going to use for 30 or 90 days, and then we're going to get off of it. Because after 90 days, your body has already integrated the information that it's bringing in, and now it's not as effective. We just want to pulse it in so that we can use it to get you back to homeostasis. So I love the way you said that, because I'm wondering if people could just look at their whole life, whether it was their physical health, their emotional health, and like look at what you're doing too much of and look at what you're doing too little of, and see how you can start to do the opposite of that to bring to now be in balance with your mental and physical health. Would that be one way to approach this?
Totally. And I think the ironic thing is that in order to enhance your body's ability to foster homeostasis, you actually have to push the edges of it, right? So the more that you get into that cold plunge, or the more that you have those stressful conversations, or the more that you engage in some smart, intelligent, intermittent fasting, et cetera, the more able the body is to bounce back. It's when you live in this totally artificial thermoneutral environment, for example, is your body then, you dull the edges of your body's ability to actually cultivate that balance. And if like I can paint like the portrait, sometimes I talk about this concept called the Big Macs. It's kind of silly, but it's like not the ones not the ones that you just eat from the Evil M, but the big modern American conveniences. And I think about it this way. I sort of paint this portrait. Let's say it's like 8 p.m. You're inside in a single family house. You're alone. It's in a nice thermoregulated 72-degree environment. You're sitting in a lazy boy chair, and you're door dashing some pizza and you're binging Netflix, right? Okay.
Yep.
That sounds like a totally delicious, wonderful way to spend a Friday night or a Tuesday night, and certainly a very normal activity that a lot of people engage in. But every single one of those aspects that I just mentioned really erode your ability to be healthy. And so, I mean, pick any one of them,
Yeah.
not living communally, right? Hyper individualism, like living within vertical boxes or single family homes, separated and cleaved from your community environment. Well, loneliness now, it's like from an all cause mortality perspective, equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, according to
Wow.
Julia Holdstead Lund at BYU. So, okay, what else? Well, eating at 8 p.m., that's probably eating outside of your desired window, and you're probably going to go to bed with your food undigested. But that's something that we do all the time. Living in a thermoregulated environment where we never have exposure to
Right.
fluctuations in temperature, like I said, will undermine your metabolic function. It limits dopamine production, and then it also makes poor advantage or takes poor advantage of these hard wrought adaptive mechanisms that we built up over hundreds of thousands of years. It's like when we get hot, we actually activate the production of all these amazing proteins, BDNF and heat shock proteins, et cetera.
Yep.
We give up our emotional resilience that is associated with getting very, very cold. So that's another one. We're probably sitting in this lazy boy chair with this, like I am right now, with 90-degree kind of angles between our hips and our knees, which using no back musculature or no leg
Right.
musculature, and essentially tightening up our hip joints, etc. We were meant to relax at night, sure, but we generally squatted. That was our
Yes.
resting squat, is how we actually sat. And you just go down the line watching Netflix. I do it. Raise my hand. Okay. And it's lovely and wonderful to binge Larry David from time to time. But of course, if you're doing that late at night, you're disrupting the balance between cortisol and melatonin, basically your circadian rhythm, by taking in blue light into this kind of inferior part of your retina. Not great. So essentially, we've layered on at every turn ease and convenience and
Yep.
comfort. But in so many cases, chronic disease is the result of this chronic ease.
Right. Well, actually, let's break down that dis-ease, because we throw out disease like very casually. Oh, you've got this disease. Or, I mean, we're even throwing chronic disease out right now like that. Like, oh, like just because
Yeah.
everybody's got a chronic disease. But when you break it down into dis-ease, and then you take that and you look at the physiology of the body goes into dis-ease when it's not in homeostasis.
100%. Totally. I mean, that's how I've begun to think of disease,
Yeah.
is the inability to actually maintain a dynamic homeostasis. So, and you
So
can look at that. I mean, dysregulated blood sugar levels. Okay, there's an obvious one, right? Dysregulated lipid panels. That's another obvious one. Almost everywhere you look, what we label as disease is a reflection of certain imbalances in your physiology.